Why would someone need all these different materials? What's the difference between the stainless steel, the carbon steel, et cetera, et cetera?
So it's an excellent question, and I tend to find with all these kinds of skillets and stuff, they're all ones that I want in my collection. They're not going to be ones I use every day. There's definitely certain ones here that I'm going to grab more often than not, and other ones are going to sit most of the time. But when I need that for a specific application or for certain things, it really is the pan I want to have for that application. And so for me, you know, my go-to is going to be a carbon steel pan. So this gets you a surface that is heavy enough that it's going to heat very evenly. It's a large, nice, good used pan. But the seasoning that it develops over time, this patina that it grows, you can see this one's been used a lot, and it's not a gorgeous looking surface. But the more it gets that wear in the surface of the seasoning, the more nonstick it becomes. So this allows you to use this almost more like a non-stick pan without having the non-stick coatings, which are going to eventually wear and degrade over time. So a non-stick pan for me is an egg pan, or something I'm working with, something super fragile that I don't want to worry about it sticking. But most of the time, I can do a lot of that in the carbon steel. I use these. These are really going to be my breakfast pans. I'm going to be using these for, pancakes. I'm going to be using them for eggs, bacon, things where it's going to get super greasy and it's just easier to clean out the nonstick pan. And I'm not having to use spatulas or things that are going to risk damaging it. That's where these are really going to get used. But sometimes you want something a little lighter weight. And that's where the stainless is a really good counter to the carbon steel.
Which ones are heavier?
So the heaviest pans is going to be your natural cast iron. This guy is heavy. And so that's why this one is really more my baking pan. So I'm going to use this a lot when I'm going to do something like a cornbread or something where I'm going to cook something or I want to sear it or put a sauce in there and then stick it in the oven. This is also something you use on a campfire and things where you don't mind getting it a little charred, using it on a barbecue grill. But this is not going to be my go-to on as a skillet on the surface. I'm going to tend to go more the carbon steel or the enameled cast iron. The enameled cast iron, the big thing with this is you don't risk losing a seasoning that's built up on the surface. This is enameled, and so you basically can cook tomato sauce, acids. You're not going to damage this pan. And so this one I really like as my one pot wonder when I want to sear something off and get a good even cooking surface, but then I want to throw some tomato sauce, or make a piccata or things like that. That's where this is really good. And then depending on what you're doing, you could do some of that kind of same thing in the stainless. So again, if I'm doing like a piccata, things like that, where I want to sear something, but then I want to develop a sauce afterwards, this is really helpful while still being a really easy maneuverable pan. In comparison to the DeMeyer, where, these are basically analogs of each other, the same style of pan, but this has got a lot more weight, and so I'm not going to want to gravitate towards this one for just a quick dinner meal unless I'm really trying to get a hard sear on like a steak or something like that. So, if I'm trying to get a really hard sear, then I can go to the DeMeyer stainless. If not, I'm going to work mostly in the Heston stainless. If I don't have to worry about acids or things like that, then I'll probably stick in the carbon steel. So that's kind of where you kind of get a little mix of different materials depending on what it is you're doing. And that's application at hand. And then as far as the kit's concerned, I try to mix and match the sizes. So rather than having a 10-piece set of all of the same material, you're kind of getting the same thing in multiple sets. So you've got a really large carbon steel, you have a smaller but still good size of the enamel, you have an even smaller still of the cast iron styled stainless steel skillet, the DeMeyer, and then I've got just a large size of this. So you kind of have a mix of different things depending on what you need for sizes, kind of going from from largest to smallest, all in one set, and then multiple materials depending on what it is you're trying to cook, whether or not you're going to be dealing with acids, or whether or not you are trying to do one pot, or you want the higher sides with the everyday pan. So there's kind of slight differences that you'll kind of grow to learn over time as you use these. You'll find which ones are your favorite, and then you may say, hey, I really love this DeMeyer skillet. Okay, let me now get this in a larger, 13-inch or smaller size. So some of this may be kind of a baseline for you to learn which pans you love, and then grow from there to get more sizes of that particular style. But I want to give you that smattering of different materials so you can try them all. And like I said, my having all of them, I use these all. These all get used. So it's not something that, but some don't get used very often, you know. This is going to be a pan that's very occasional. The large nonstick is only going to be if I'm cooking for a crowd. Otherwise, I really use this guy most of the time. But I have the options depending on what it is you got. So that's kind of how all this came to be.
Yeah.